Welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota.
Welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. The guests on this podcast shed light on innovations in value-added agriculture, highlight some of the important voices and work that's being done throughout Minnesota's ag sector, and hopefully we're educating folks on some of the resources and organizations that support Minnesota agriculture. I'm Don Wick from the Red River Farm Network. We've got a great conversation coming your way today as we take a look at a topic called the Protein Navigator. Our guests include Joanne Berkenkamp, who is the Managing Director of MBOLD. We're going to learn more about that as we move forward as well. And Jason Robinson, Project Business Development Director with AURI. First of all, both of you, thanks for being so gracious with your time and joining us today.
Great to be here.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Don.
Joanne, let's start by way of introduction. Educate me and our audience about MBOLD. What's the mission? What is the purpose?
Coalition. And it came about over a number of years as the CEOs of many of the big food and agriculture companies that are headquartered in here in Minnesota, the president of the university, Greater MSP, AURI, those leaders came together and kind of realized that although they knew each other, that's not to say that these companies and institutions were collaborating to the degree that they might. And there was a feeling that if there was a table for CEO level collaboration, we could collectively tackle bigger challenges together than any of these companies and institutions, as large as they are, could tackle effectively on their own. And that desire for a CEO level table for collaboration gave rise over a period of years to what we now call MBOLD. And so we work together around the mission of accelerating solutions to big challenges facing food and agriculture, particularly related to climate and sustainability, and these questions of how the world will feed itself within planetary boundaries as we move toward a population of 9.5 or 10 billion people by the year 2050. So that's really our mission. We have a number of areas that we work on, including regenerative agriculture, protein sustainability, entrepreneurship, circularity for certain plastic packaging. And it's been a fascinating role for me as the managing director there, and we're just thrilled to partner with organizations like AURI in that work.
And always better when we work together and you take a look at some of the major league talent that's sitting around that table. It's pretty impressive. So, Jason, talk to me about AURI's mission. How does it fit into what MBOLD is doing?
Yeah, it's a great question, Don. The MBOLD mission and the AURI mission actually mesh pretty seamlessly in terms of how we do our work and the scope of the work. The only real difference tends to be in stated scale of impact, where AURI's mission is really focused on generating impact for the Minnesota ag economy, but we do it through regional action and global collaboration, which is where that fit with the MBOLD mission is so perfect. It's because it's not that we are misaligned in the what or the how, just in our stated scale. Knowing that we're a largely Minnesota state-funded nonprofit corporation, we have to show impact for the Minnesota ag economy. But at the same time, impact for the Minnesota ag economy has impact for the entire world, given our status as one of the U.S.'s top agricultural producers.
I think we always learn from our success stories. Joanne, talk to me about some of the work that has been done and really how MBOLD does its work.
So, sometimes I get a question about the geographic scope of MBOLD's work, and I'll just say the common thread with all of our members, like General Mills and Cargill and Target and Compeer Financial and Schwann's and the U and ARI and others, from our base at Greater MSP is all of our members are headquartered in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. But our companies, for instance, reach consumers in 125 countries around the world. Their collective revenues are, they exceed $300 billion a year. So we've got this home base in Minnesota, but we were working toward global impact and really trying to figure out how do we leverage the best of what Minnesota has to offer to take on challenges that matter around the world. And so, we're just so thrilled to work with AURI because MBOLD will never have food scientists and people in laboratories with their Erlenmeyer flasks, doing the R&D work. That's not what we do, but we need it. Right. And so that collaboration has just been key to our work. And so, Don, you were asking about success stories from what we've done so far. Yeah. So I would say, one I'll flag that AURI has been part of really integrally is our work in the entrepreneurship space. So MBOLD has a program called Bold Growth, and it's all about helping small businesses and innovators thrive and scale up. Now, there are a lot of organizations that help small businesses. It's a very crowded field. And so when we thought about, big businesses realize that we need small businesses. It's good for the economy when small businesses thrive. It's good for innovation, right? So we need each other. How can MBOLD be helpful? And the thing that we realized was the thing that MBOLD has that no one else has is our membership. And so for many, many small companies, they may want to get into, they want to be in partnership with General Mills or Target or Cargill, but often they're not going to get their emails returned by companies of that size, right? And yet they would really benefit from mentorship by big companies. And so our Bold Growth program, which is now in its, third or fourth year, is really aimed at selecting a small number of applicant companies and then giving them very in-depth mentorship by leaders from MBOLD's membership and network, right? And that mentorship is very in-depth for 6 to 9 months, completely confidential, and it's free. And it's tailored around what those particular companies need at this stage of their growth to reach their next level of success. And so I do feel like that's been a real success for those companies and for us as a coalition, that we're bringing something unique. We've seen among the companies that have been through the program, their sales have tripled on average since their experience. We've had one exit. Centerio was recently purchased by John Deere. So you're just seeing companies move smarter and faster as they move up that growth curve. So we're proud of that work, and AURI has really co-managed that with us.
Jason, I see you've been nodding your head, and it kind of feeds into that whole entrepreneurship type of mantra that we have within AURI as well.
That's exactly right, Don. I think what's so amazing about a program like Bold Growth is that it's, on its surface, it may seem like it's about creating a connection, almost a sales connection to those large organizations that could potentially, help improve the bottom lines for these companies. But it's not about creating a sales connection. It's about transferring strategic knowledge and the benefit of collectively hundreds of years delivering value to consumers, to these small organizations that are looking to scale. It's not about selling more juice shots. For instance, one of our companies that's gone through the program is one called So Good So You, that sells wellness focused juice shots. And it wasn't about creating a connection to Target or General Mills to sell more juice shots. It was about creating a connection with folks who have been in the industry and taking that collective knowledge and helping them to understand, well, how do I drive cost out of my cost of goods? How do I improve my distribution strategies? How do I look at creating a more strategic approach to manufacturing that can help us grow beyond this cute little Minnesota-based company into a national powerhouse? And for AURI, oftentimes some of these businesses are ones that we had connections with when they were even smaller. And so to complete that circle and come back to provide even more support through the power of our connections and an ability to facilitate conversations with MBOLD is a really, frankly, just a really awesome way for us to continue to drive impact through our mission.
I was going to ask if there's an overlap, but it sounds to me more like a synergy between the two organizations as you work together. What are your thoughts?
You're 100% right. Because our mission has such an overlap with MBOLD, we can often put resources against work streams that MBOLD as an organization simply doesn't have the resources to accomplish, whether it's scientific expertise or infrastructure. We have labs that exist in Waseca, Minnesota, and in Marshall, Minnesota, where we can actually pull scientific resources against some of those more tactical things, more tactical experiments that we may want to run, whether it's about flexible film or about, and we'll get into this in a little bit later, I'm sure, whether it's about dehulling navy beans to make sure that they're more accessible from a protein ingredients point of view. We have some of those resources on staff to actually accomplish that. And while Membold partners also have some of those resources, our mission is such that it frees us up to pursue those scientific needs, if you will, those experiments that aren't competing with the for-profit nature of a General Mills or a Target or so forth. So because our priorities are aligned so closely with MBOLD's and the mission that we jointly are trying to accomplish, we can push resources against those work streams that really make a difference to meeting the collective missions.
Joanne, anything you'd want to add to that?
Because it is a coalition. And so, in terms of how we do our work, it really is around figuring out like the pre-competitive lane where collaboration is needed. And all of our members are doing their own thing, which is fabulous and are really good at what they do. The lane that we occupy is where can we get faster, further, better, smarter, maybe more cost effectively if we work together. And so all of our members, AURI and the others as well, all bring in unique capabilities. And I think that's kind of our secret sauce, is we've got a really powerhouse group of players from across the value chain, from Cargill to Target, right? The CPGs in the middle and the university and McKinsey and so forth. Really sort of like bringing their best to our work. And of course, we're based at Greater MSP, which does economic development work focused in the Minneapolis-St. Paul region, but again, with broader and increasingly regional and global impact.
Well, I said at the beginning, we were talking about the Protein Navigator. Joanne, why is protein a focus for MBOLD?
We've had a body of work, a pillar, if you will, that's focused on innovation for a number of years, and it's gone through a number of iterations, I would say. And as we thought about kind of what's the next phase of our innovation work, we really thought about the issue of protein because it's a critical part of the human diet. Everyone needs it. It also has significant, environmental impacts. And so we really need to think about, as global demand rises probably by 40 to 50% by 2050, we need more protein and we need it to be increasingly sustainable so that people can be fed within environmental boundaries at a global level. And so we really have focused on this issue of how can we drive innovation to make proteins more sustainable? And we have two areas of work, one of which is helping traditional proteins like meat and dairy become more sustainable through the lever of animal feed, and particularly the introduction of alternative crops, like industrial hemp, camelina, others, into those feed mixes. And then secondly, how can we expand the variety of alternative protein options so that consumers have more and more choice, right, about how they get protein into their diet? So we have a strategy that's also focused on accelerating the success of plant-based proteins, right? Things like dry beans and chickpeas and so forth that are well established, have a lot of traction. Oats also have promise as a protein ingredient. And so we're working with a range of partners to really look at how can we help those plant proteins perform better for consumers. And we know it's things like they have to taste better. The texture's got to be better. The price has got to be better, right? How do you make sure that you've got a clean label? How do you make sure you have the nutritional content that consumers want? And so we're working on both of those tracks to drive innovation, both with animal feed and plant proteins for human consumption.
It's interesting because Minnesota's really at that nexus where you've got a strong animal-based protein sector with dairy and hogs, beef, but at the same time, with the diversity we have in Minnesota, the plant-based options are almost endless as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Minnesota has so much going for it. And I think, when you live here, you sort of forget, like, not everyone lives in the heartland of American agriculture, right? And Minnesota is right in the middle of it in the upper Midwest. We've got this amazing concentration of big companies. We've got the University of Minnesota, institutions like AURI. We're at the center of, national hubs of transportation, processing capabilities. There's a lot going on to be leveraged. But as we thought about this whole protein issue, we realized like nobody has tried to leverage those capabilities strategically to make us a hub for driving innovation that's of global importance. Right? We've got a lot of the raw ingredients. We've got so much momentum, so much to be proud of, but nobody has really tried to leverage them in a more collective way. And that is really what MBOLD is about. How do we kind of optimize those capabilities to achieve more impact together in driving innovation and protein sustainability?
Member organizations can truly provide impact that gets us to a place where, where we're moving beyond the, just the standards to create new opportunities for people, and frankly, for the organizations that are looking to serve those people.
Well, I know MBOLD has launched a Protein Navigator. Joanne, talk to me about what this service provides. What are we hoping to accomplish?
Radiating around this whole concept of maybe trying to drive innovation and protein sustainability, we brought together under ARI's hospices kind of a global roundtable of protein industry stakeholders, government representatives from places around the world, leading nations. The Netherlands is very strong. The Canadians were there, the Finns. We had a couple of representatives from Israel, some U.S. representatives. And we were really trying to understand, as you look at innovation and you look at entering the U.S. market, for those of you that are, in some cases, like quite far ahead, like globally leading on the innovation side, what do you look for when you look for a place to call a home base in the United States? What do you understand about Minnesota? How do you perceive us? Some of those questions. And it was fascinating because we got a lot of feedback about people really understand that we're at the heartland of American agriculture for a range of crops, including, critical ones like pea and soy and others. People understand that we're at the heart of a lot of transportation networks, that we have this global concentration of big companies and processing capabilities and research capabilities. But they also said, something we've heard before, which is if you're not from here, it's kind of hard to navigate Minnesota, right? Because there are a lot of players. It's a complicated place. State government can be challenging to navigate in terms of state incentives. Siting facilities is just a complicated undertaking. So we really got this message and we've taken it to heart. Like, if you want to open the door and make it easier for companies from other countries, from other parts of the United States to enter into Minnesota's protein ecosystem, you need somebody to help us navigate, right? Like that would really help us. And so we got the message, we've taken it to heart, and that is what has caused us in response to launch now this Protein Navigator. And the idea is we've got some material on our website. You throw your name in the hopper through our online portal, and you get connected to a human being who has a lot of insight and experience, and they will help you, right? And that is their job. And the humans you're getting connected to are at AURI. So Jason and his team, who I think collectively, Jason, have like 95 years of experience working with General Mills
Right.
and Target and others, a lot of business development work, like on a large scale, product development, product launch, small business development, et cetera. So that really becomes like the conduit. And then this navigator service will help connect people to, for instance, Greater MSP is a real resource. We've got all sorts of people at Greater MSP who do business investment work, help companies, for instance, figure out where to site locations or help them navigate state incentive programs. Or, ARI has insight around where's the market going and who has capabilities around co-manufacturing and so forth. So that's the idea. And we're just very psyched to work with ARI in launching that new initiative.
Even when I did my homework for our conversation today, We talk about the Protein Navigator, and it says it's powered by AURI. What's that mean, Jason?
Sure. Well, building on what Joanne just said about how the Navigator is expected to work, AURI's role is really about creating a welcoming environment for companies that are interested in the Minnesota ecosystem. And so our hope from a Minnesota centric point of view is that they're interested in exploring Minnesota as a place to put their operation beyond just a headquarters. Perhaps it's working with Minnesota farmers to to source the products that they're growing or the animals that they're raising. Perhaps it's about putting in a processing facility. But as Joanne said, we've all heard the term Minnesota nice. And it's kind of a simple way of saying that you can come here, but it's hard to work your way around. And that's what AURI's mission is when it comes to the Protein Navigator. It's about creating those connections. AURI has been around since 1989. We've been doing our work in the state of Minnesota for over 35 years. Our Rolodex, whether real or virtual, is pretty gigantic. And being able to create those connections is what's going to make these organizations from outside our ecosystem more successful when they have a quote unquote navigator to help them navigate the map, if you will. Let me give you an example, Don. At the end of 2024, before the Protein Navigator was officially launched, MBOLD was actually connected with a company based in the UK called Kiome. It's a very interesting company. Their primary focus, they're a biotechnology company, but their primary focus initially has been on how do we extract a protein from the leafy biomass of sugar beets after the beets are harvested. So typically sugar beets are, during the harvest, the beets are harvested, sent to, some of the big entities like the Southern Min Beet Sugar Co-op or American Crystal Sugar. But that leafy biomass remains on the ground and essentially is tilled back into the ground to create organic matter for the soil. And that is it's a great opportunity to build soil health, but it's also leaving a revenue opportunity on the ground for farmers. And so what this company Kiome can do is actually take that leafy biomass, press the quote unquote juice out of the biomass, and then extract a protein called rubisco from that juice. And once you can isolate and dry it down, now all of a sudden you've got a very functional protein for the marketplace that can drive revenue back to Minnesota farmers and back to the Minnesota economy while avoiding interruption of the sugar beet harvest, which is a very calculated campaign on an annual basis that is really fine-tuned for Minnesota. Obviously, what we need to do is we need to understand how do we create those connections between this company Kiome and the organizations that can help them not only validate the concept, but to potentially scale that concept in Minnesota. So earlier this year, we went on let's call it a sugar beet tour of Minnesota that AURI was able to conduct that connected them with innovation leaders at American Crystal, at Southern Min Beet Sugar Co-op, with the Minnesota Department of Ag, with Joanne at MBOLD, and various other partners to get connected to the community here in Minnesota so they have the best chance at creating a business model that works for everyone and can realize those benefits. Obviously, we've also been able to continue to work on behalf of a company like that. I had a conversation at Farm Fest not that long ago with sugar beet farmers in my network, where I just wanted to pose the idea to them. What do you guys think? And at a very conversational level, being able to have very discrete conversations that were honest about their challenges helped us to recognize that there are some very real dynamics at play that a company like Kiyome that wants to disrupt a little bit needs to overcome in order to make that happen. So that's when you say powered by AURI, that's just an example of how we're able to use our deep connections to both industry, farmers, and service providers in the state to help these organizations that are interested in siting here to get themselves in a place where they are going to give themselves the best chance to be successful. In a sense, I'd call that taking advantage of AURI's superpower.
I love that example. When I think about just agriculture in general in a state like Minnesota, we are so tech-driven, but relationships, that's really the currency that
Absolutely.
make this all come together, right?
Absolutely.
So as you look at where we go from here, what are you both excited about? What's the next steps?
Stages. It's in a formative stage, I would say, at this point. We're getting clearer about how that's going to be focused. We're pulling in more partners. We also welcome more engagement. So we have a pretty open door. And I would just say, I think there's a lot of potential for Minnesota farmers in this. I think there's a lot of potential good that we can do with consumers to get them a growing variety of options that are healthy, priced effectively, more sustainable, and so forth. So I'm very excited. And, the other thing I would say is if you look at the growing regions for a lot of the crops that we're looking at, they often extend from southern Minnesota, sometimes down into Iowa, well up into Canada and neighboring U.S. states. And so we really look at this also as, potentially kind of a binational effort. So we're very excited to be in conversation with Canadian counterparts. Our team is going to be going up to Saskatchewan shortly to visit with some of our colleagues up there and really think about how do we leverage the best of what's in our region and with Canadian partners to our north to figure out how to drive the success of some of these crops and really add value to them on the landscape and throughout the supply chain.
Well, again, our thanks to Jason Robinson from AURI, the Project Business Development Director focusing in on this whole food area, and from MBOLD Managing Director Joanne Birkenkamp. Thanks so much to both of you. I really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful.
You bet. And thank you for listening to the Ag Innovation News Podcast. It is presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. I'm Don Wick.
This has been the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota.